live. Not live for you, but live for me. It's Faith Over Breakfast with Andy Littleton from Mission Church and myself, Eric Deepen from the Village.
That's right.
And we are on a Zoom call. I thought our conversation was one of the better ones. I really enjoyed it. We talked about the Tiger King, and that led us into some really good, deep things.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, for all you listening, it's just a bit in, but we actually, I think, had some good reflections at the beginning just on how this is impacting our lives as pastors. And so, you tune into that for a little bit, and then we're gonna jump into some Tiger King, and out of that, we're gonna jump into some rhythms of life discussion that I think is valuable no matter what you're interested in watching or listening to. So, great conversation, Eric. Thanks for talking this morning. And
yeah.
Thanks all of you for tuning in, and yeah, check it out. Eric, sir, how are you doing over there?
No, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Are you guys? Ooh, you got a tiger in your house. I can hear it.
Yeah. This I saved a few of them. I hear you're interested in
I don't know.
them or something like that.
That's just an observation. So what's it like in the CPEN household during the week, the height of the pandemic?
Is this supposed to be the height? I mean,
I don't know. Some news headline said this would be a very bad week.
Well, it has been for everybody but us. I mean, well, I know from people in the hospital, it's kind of, depending on what hospital you're at, it's pretty crazy.
Right. Well, how are you? How are you guys?
How are we? Well, I'm actually relatively busy when it comes to my work. So I'm actually more busy probably than I was before the pandemic.
Yeah, I feel I've observed that there might be two categories of people, those, or let's say three. Those that are, their work just kind of slid over to home. It's the same amount. That's one group. The other group is where it feels like everything halted and they feel like they have nothing to do. And then that's like starting to discover that they're busier than ever. And
yeah.
Like I'm maybe in that group.
You're discovering that you're busier than ever?
Well, yeah, it's different. I mean, but yeah, it just feels like, or maybe it's because I don't like the type of busyness, because it's a lot of, conference calls and stuff.
Yeah.
I like to get coffee and sit with somebody and hear what they have to say, not do this over and over and over personally.
Right. I feel like I run into a lot of the engineers in our church are like, this is what I do all the time.
Yeah. I just talked to a buddy yesterday and he's like, yeah, I do conference calls all day anyway.
Yeah. It's not a big deal. It's not a new thing.
Right. But for some of us, it's quite different.
Yeah. Well, and they're still emotional and they're still spiritual calls, which are different than doing conference calls all day.
Yeah.
But
no, that's true.
I also just think there isn't as much, I don't know, like, I thought that maybe the tyranny of the urgent would go away a little bit. Like,
felt like
I might have a little bit more margin in my life and space, and
yeah.
But I feel like the tyranny of the urgent's actually a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, and there's different, versions of this we're all experiencing. But for me, I've got 3, SBA loans I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And, we heard that Wells Fargo stopped, and that's Small Business Association loans. Wells Fargo only took a few, or they took thousands, but then they closed the portal on people. And so like a small business owner here in town, actually EXO, where we used to, film record Faith Over Breakfast, they went to apply for their loan and they couldn't through Wells Fargo.
Wow.
So then I saw last night, we were supposed to get an email when Chase Bank made that available. And I haven't seen one. I decided to just look on the website. Lo and behold, at 4:45 p.m. yesterday, Chase started accepting applications. And I thought, I probably better do this, because what if they get swamped, which I heard they got a bunch of applications sent in anyway, and we're already swamped. And so I was up till midnight trying to apply for loans. And then I got in there and they wanted different documents than we'd heard. So one of them I submitted without one of the documents they wanted, and they will not accept any phone calls, and you can't email them. You just have to submit and wait and see what they say. So you can't ask any questions. Anyway, all that to say, I'm like, this feels like way more urgent craziness than ever in a way. I'm home.
Yeah.
I'm home, but so that's not just like the typical pastor world, even though a lot of churches are doing it. Are you guys doing that?
Doing what?
Getting an SBA loan?
No.
Churches can.
Are you guys doing it?
We're putting it out there. We're applying. And so, and I actually thought that religious organizations couldn't, and then, basically that's not true, that religious organizations are encouraged to, actually, because they're closed. So, anyway, it becomes this crazy. So I'm like, man, I'm a pastor business owner, and all of a sudden I'm doing all my own loan documents for 3 loans. That's different. That's insane.
Yeah.
So I assume for you, you're talking more about being in touch with people, right? I mean, I'm trying to do that too, but you're doing fine.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think, I definitely am in touch with people more, and there is more of that sense of, there's a sense of the unknown and what's going to happen, and what are we going to do?
And you have all those answers?
Usually.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so there's some of that. There's also just, when you have a series of calls, or meetings, like 5 a day where I'm just full of meetings, you have this margin where you get in the car.
Yes.
You drive to the next meeting and you pray and you zone out a little bit and your body relaxes and you move to the next meeting. And, as a pastor, I don't think people fully grasp the reality that, you're part traveling therapist, you're part biblical scholar, you're part
organization leader.
Yeah, you're part friend, you're part janitor, you're part, electronics expert, you're part
loan officer, apparently.
Your loan officer, grocery store shopper, so there's a lot of hats you wear, even in this virus time. Somebody on Saturday, they were like, I was saying I was busy, and they're like, well, how could you be busy today? Like, what did you do today? And I'm like, well, I talked for this person for 2 hours. I had this counseling appointment, and so I had 3 appointments on a Saturday that I ended up.
And people go, look, I talked to my friends on Saturday too. What's the big deal?
Right. Yeah. No, I don't know if they say that. It's just they don't realize, if you're not if you're not engaging them and talking to them, and they don't see you at church,
right?
They don't know what you're doing or what's exactly happening.
And there's a difference between having a conversation that is just two people talking and catching up versus one where one of you feels more responsible than the other.
Yeah, I think that there's that element, and I also think that, you know, as somebody who is an elder and a spiritual oversight of people, there's a spiritual burden.
Yeah.
And in a time of crisis, there's a lot of spiritual stuff going on there that you bear and pray for, and that's just part of your job. It's part of your life. It's not things that, I mean, hopefully people experience the spiritual benefits of it, but
right.
It's a calling that has a burden anyway. So yeah, so I do feel more busy at home. It's pretty rhythmed because, you know, I get up, I go take a 20-minute walk, I pray with my wife, either grab a little breakfast or I head off to the building to sit in meetings or, you know, plan or work on a sermon. And then I come home in the evenings, other than whatever, you know, I do have one study group that I go to, or I Zoom in, but mostly we eat dinner together, everybody cooks, we clean dishes, we hang out in the evening. That's been really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, one of the nice things that a lot of people are doing is watching the Tiger King.
Right. You want to talk about that, and I see it on Netflix, but to be honest, I'm trying to think of the last show we watched on Netflix, and I can't even remember it. So
that's okay. So, I mean, you know the concept of our podcast, Eric. Not everybody does. You do. The idea is we're sitting down for breakfast and, you know, what's going on this week, and people get to sit in with a couple pastors and hear what they have to say and what they think. So, you know, I get to inform you here, Eric. A lot of people are watching the Tiger King.
Yeah. So normally you ask me about my life, and I would then return that favor and say, so Andy, like, what's really big in your life right now? What's going on?
It would not be the Tiger King. That wouldn't. I'm straying a little from the just natural conversation and talking about this.
I understand.
But I know that a lot of our people are watching it, and I actually was just like, I have no interest in this. And then my wife and I were like, you know, so many people are watching it. Let's check one out. We were going to watch a movie, and we were running out of time, and we were like, well, we can't watch a whole movie. Well, let's watch one of those Tiger King episodes. We've now watched 2, and here's where I'm at with it. Number, I'll just confess this. Do I want to watch the rest? Yes and no. The yes part of me is there. I want to watch more of it. The no part of me is because I feel like the yes part of me is not a good part of me. I don't think I want to watch it for good reasons. I feel like there's a lot of good options. I don't want to watch tons of stuff during this time, personally. I don't want that to be my new thing I slide into, is binge watching. That's not a rhythm I want to create for myself when this is over. Anyway, but then especially, I think what I love about the Tiger King is how insane it is. I love the insanity, and I love the drama. Now, I'll get into, I think there's some things that there's a reason some people resonate with it, maybe on a deeper level, I think, but from, you know, watching 2 episodes. But this, I'm coming to you all, to the world, as a place, from a place where I'm trying to decide if I watch the rest of this thing or not. I haven't watched the whole thing. I don't know the whole story. I don't know if I want to know the whole story. I'm trying to decide. I don't know. So from that confusing little statement, Eric, what do you want to know about the Tiger King?
Well,
you want to know about the Tiger King?
From the, like, you know how Netflix when you actually have your little thing on the show, it'll do like a little preview. So from what I can gain from the preview is that this guy gets hired, or somebody gets hired to kill someone, and he has lots of tigers, and rich people have donated money, and it seems like a lot of salacious things happen.
Yeah.
So is that true, or is that just
kind of
the buy-in?
Well, yeah, again, I'm only in 2 episodes. So it's it really centers around the drama between these two individuals, and then there's a whole bunch of other characters, these small zoo owners that you start to learn about, or actually pretty large zoo owners, who are just as prominent as the guy Joe Exotic, who's kind of the poster person for this. But there's just a bunch of other just as prominent people who become a part of the show. But but these are real people. For instance, Shaquille O'Neal bought tigers from this guy. So, it's like, this is a prominent dude. But the drama is between him, who he is...
Wait. Shaquille O'Neal, I thought he came out with a statement saying he didn't buy them.
He probably did, and I'm sure that if I watched more episodes and really paid attention, he was on, like, they had a clip of him on some sports show saying he went over to this guy's zoo and got himself a couple more tigers. Now, was that verified in the show? No. But they did have footage of him at the zoo, and he said that on TV or something like that. But maybe by got himself some tigers, he meant I got myself some tickles behind a tiger's ear. Maybe that's what he meant. I don't know.
Well, I know, like, I know these movie stars have tigers. And these basketball stars, but where do they put them?
Well, apparently a lot of people have tigers. That's a subtext of this: tigers and lions and ligers. I mean, these dudes are raising ligers. And
there are more in captivity than there are in the wild.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and they get into that. So there's a whole group of people who are breeding them and having, they have whole organizations built around petting cubs. And so Joe Exotic, I think, has 227 tigers on his like zoo-like property. So now then the other character is this lady Carol, who is a conservationist. And so she is trying to she's a big cat rescue. She's trying to save these tigers that are bred for captivity and stop things. Now, everything about Carol is like, she's saying all the good stuff. She is a nonprofit. It all feels good. Everything about Joe is conflicting because he's he says crazy things. He talks about it's going to be like another Waco if you come in here and try to take my tigers. He's got AR-15s. He's shooting stuff, blowing stuff up, threatening Carol all over the place and other people. And so I assume people, their immediate thing with him is like, he's ridiculous and he's terrible. And then the subtext, I think, that makes him likable becomes that he's gay.
Okay.
And I think that in this show becomes the subtext where it's like, oh man, he's gay. He grew up, nobody liked him, and he grew up, or he tried to commit suicide, was taken in through like a recovery group into a person's house who raised tigers, and he found these cats to be companions, and they helped him recover. And all of a sudden, and he takes in all his workers are prisoners and ex-cons and addicts who are like recovering because of working with the cats. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe Joe's not so bad, right?
Right.
And then you find out, and then there's this other dude, Dr. Bhagavan Ankle, and he has this giant zoo, and it's all very polished and upscale, and you find out, and he has all these like women working for him, and you find out that he's a polygamist, and all the women who work for him also sleep with him, and you're like, oh. And then you find out.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it is salacious.
Oh yeah, and then you find out, you're like, well, that's crazy, and then you find out that Joe is a gay polygamist, and he has multiple husbands.
Oh, okay.
So it starts to get like, okay, whoa, and then you're like, and then you find out that Carol, they all call her a hypocrite because she is a nonprofit, but all of her tigers are in cages. She has hundreds of tigers. People pay to come see them in her sanctuary. She has all these workers, but they're all volunteers. And even though these other guys don't pay their people a lot, she pays her people zero. And she's doing it all on millions of dollars she inherited from a husband of hers who disappeared and was never found, who they all claim she fed to the cats. So maybe Carol from the nonprofit is no good as well. So, you only have to get 2 episodes in to get that. So I just wrecked 2 episodes for you. But you can see why you're drawn into all this craziness, which is what I'm like, I don't know if that's good. But then the interesting thing is like the complexity of humans, like it's not so simple. The guy who looks like he's running the cleaner organization, he's not. And the guy who looks crazy is doing some things that are good, but not all of them. And the woman who looks like she's just all about caring for the earth and the animals might be a hypocrite. And I think that layer of it is a good thing to wrestle with. It's just wrapped in so much insanity. And I think that's what.
Have you ever seen the movie A Simple Plan?
No. I've heard of it, of course, but no.
Yes, it's one of Rod's favorites. But it starts out with these guys finding like $1 million in a plane, and then it's like 3 of them, I think, and you kind of watch how something very simple begins to like deteriorate. And it sort of shows you how sin just kind of corrupts and complicates everything, and the choices you make.
I would say in this show, like if you watch it through that lens, you can definitely see that. And I think from the flip side, it's not even the flip side. You can see how sin corrupts everything. You can also see that like the image of God is still present in people, but very damaged. You could see that people aren't so simple. There's not the good people and the bad people.
Right.
Yeah.
Though, I don't think we can ever really categorize people as good and bad, being that without Christ, there's no way to find any good. But
right, as coming from where we come from theologically, we would say from the outset, nobody's good.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could at least categorize them as crazy, in the sense that this is crazy.
It's crazy. And then I think what's interesting is like the one who comes off as the most crazy, he's still crazy. But as you get into the show, you're like, oh, he's less crazy than I thought. The ones who come across as very put together, you start going, oh, shoot. They're real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think, though, about, Psalm 1 and just like not sitting in the seat of the mocker, not, like that there's this sense that you could get yourself so easily sucked into some kind of chaotic thing like that.
Totally.
Right. And maybe even when you watch it, the question becomes like, how much of this am I entertaining? Like you were saying, what part of me is actually moving in the direction that is good for me?
So Eric, since you're not tired from pastoring people at all, and you've just got all this pastoral extra energy, work myself and vicariously all of our listeners through whether or not I should be watching this show. And if I do, how to do it and how not to do it.
Well, I first have to say I don't follow my own rules all the time, or my own, or even the path of godliness.
We know, Carol Baskin. We know.
Right? I mean, following the path of godliness is difficult, but when I think about how we engage, particularly like the whole, I don't know, the visual narrative and storytelling of our culture, we have to decide how we're going to enter in. Am I entering in to be purely entertained?
Right.
Or am I entering in as a missionary? And how much of this is required for me to be an effective missionary and to understand the culture in which I am bringing the gospel to? Because you and I, if we're followers of Jesus, don't belong in the culture. We aren't part of the culture in the sense that we are sojourners and we are part of the kingdom of God, called to be in the world.
But when you sojourn, when you travel through, when you live in the midst, you do observe the culture, and
right.
You don't just walk around with a big blindfold on.
Right. So you have to decide. I think for me, like, I always, and like, that's why I said Psalm 1 is there. It's like, I always have this sort of sense of, am I putting myself in the place of evil for the sake of evil? Like, is this something it's rewarding to me? So there's that. The other thing is, to go way back to original Faith Over Breakfast podcast and talk about our favorite pastor, Mark Driscoll. One of the things he said that has been life transforming to me, and understanding how to go about this and how to even disciple others, is that all of us have different kinds of consciences, and the Spirit speaks differently. And we also have different kinds of weaknesses. So, if I've struggled with alcohol and it's such a difficult thing for me, probably I'm not going to step weekly into a bar to care for people. I might be able to care for people who have a drinking problem, but not at a bar.
Right.
And for me, like, in my story, in my journey, like, I have to be very careful. Like, I don't watch any movies that have any kind of nudity in them, or, unless it's been vetted by somebody else I know, who I trust. And I still won't watch it without my wife, right, because I need to have somebody's conscience other than my own present in that. I also think there are people who can step into the bar and who can watch certain movies and shows that have those things in order to be able to dialogue with people who are watching them.
I agree with you. And I think, I don't think it's just like one group can step into every bar and one group can step into every movie. I think you really need to know your soul, and because it's probably like, the nudity one is, and that's real. I don't mean to minimize it, but it's always the one that comes up, right? But to some people, just movies about, probably like Ocean's 11, about, getting wealthy and stealing a bunch of money and just all the,
sure,
like,
or extreme violence, or
I'm just saying, to somebody that probably gets them all wrapped up in the wrong ways. Like, it's kind
sure,
of, they wish they were more like that, and maybe they shouldn't watch that stuff.
Yes.
Right. And so you gotta know your story and your journey, and then probably open that up to other people, so you know what you can and can't.
Right. And I also think that if you take the steps even a little further back, and you have, because our culture's, one of its idols is entertainment.
Yeah.
So in some ways we are eating meat sacrificed to idols. And so the question becomes, is this helpful to the larger body of Christ? Is this helpful to my soul? If I forget what the content is, do I worship at this idol,
right,
instead of God? Like, is it an idol I worship at?
Yeah, and I think that is what I'm debating, because there's a part of me that I really love to analyze. I love to watch shows that the culture loves and try to figure out what we love about it. But even in saying that shows the danger, because I'm not just an observer of our culture. I'm a participant, and I do have some of the same weaknesses. So I think what I was feeling in myself is like, my goal to click and watch the next episode has nothing to do with observing and understanding and connecting with friends and family. And I want to know what happens in this insane world.
Exactly.
And the fact that it is perceived to be real, which of course, is debatable. I mean, Abby was filmed in a couple scenes in a movie, and you realize how unreal these things are. And like we made furniture for a television studio here in Tucson, and they were filming a reality TV show that takes place in California here in Tucson in that studio. So like that reality TV show you are watching about LA, they're not even in LA some of the time, Right. They're in Tucson, Arizona, walking across the street to, pick up clothes at the local store because they forgot, it's just interesting. So I'm watching this and I'm trying to be aware, like what I'm interested in the perceived reality of this craziness. I don't know what the reality is. It's TV.
Right.
But that's what's got me interested, not just purely like I want to understand. I want, I think I want to be in on the crazy. I want to know what happened. I want to be able to talk about it. I want to be able to, I don't know, debate with somebody. I want to be in on this crazy secret that isn't a secret because everybody's watching.
Right. Yeah. So there's the I think that's, I think some of it's going to elicit all of those, no matter what your stance is, you're still going to want to know you're still going to get drawn in. In some ways, it's, am I able to turn that off once I walk away?
Uh-huh.
Or is it, or am I gonna look for the next Tiger show, the next show that's gonna get me in?
Always have one on in the background, right?
I don't know, so here, and I haven't watched it, but one that I have heard more about from people in my church is the blind date one. Have you heard about this?
Heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've only, again, same things. Covered over it and saw the preview on Netflix. Yeah. But we're moving to more and more salacious kinds of things because the thing that we like the earlier show or whatever is not enough. It's not fulfilling enough. So we need another thing and another thing. And there's so much money in it, in this voyeuristic thing.
Well, growing up in like the hip hop world, I mean, this is what I observed back with like Dr. Dre and then his finding and releasing of Eminem is like Dr. Dre made his millions on shock, like saying the things that nobody would say. And then what was shocking that he said wasn't shocking anymore. Just gross sexual things and smoking weed all of a sudden wasn't shocking, and so he had to push the envelope. So in somebody like Eminem to talk about murdering his wife, that was shocking, and people consumed it because they were looking for the next thing, right? And I think a lot of entertainers understand that to keep you glued, that's what they need to do. And I mean, A, that's just their strategy. It's good to understand that, but B, it's good to understand why we respond to that, and not to just blindly do it and consume it and keep going, because it really is a path into darkness, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the reality is if you shut off the noise for a little bit, you start realizing that being alone with yourself is actually kind of empty and anxiety producing, and you are more in touch with the fear and your lack of control of the world.
Yeah.
And so having all the noise, having like the momentary fill-ups from these kinds of things helps you kind of get through the day and not feel those things, kind of numb out to them all, which makes it, I mean, to just be a pastor for a moment, to me, it's like, this is the thing that keeps us all from feeling connected to God. Yeah. So we say, oh, God never speaks to me. God never I don't feel close to him. I'm like, well, I know in my own life, and I'm pretty sure in all of everybody else's, it's because we keep everything so busy so we don't have to deal with the things that God is actually speaking to.
Right.
And I think that, I'm not saying that that's what you're doing with the show, but the show certainly does that for people.
Oh, it could become that easily. And I've seen that happen. Right. Like we all have, like, we don't want to sit in the silence. We're uncomfortable sitting with ourselves and with God. And so then what is it that catches our attention that we so easily layer over the silence? And it could be anything, but yeah, that, like I said, that desire to like click and watch another episode, that very well and often is exactly that impulse to not deal with something else.
So I know this is totally off the subject here, but maybe it's not, because it's been something I've been thinking about. On Sundays when we all gather, and I feel like your church and my church and a lot of different more liturgical churches are this way, and I guess all church has liturgy, but there are certain things about breaking bread together, reading confessions together, singing songs together, orienting ourselves under scripture being spoken together, that has some kind of power. Like the Spirit of God seems to indwell it in a way that it gives us something to reorient ourselves in this process of trying to, in the process of watching this tiger thing, or how we deal with the rest of our life. That I think that's the thing that I have felt the most absent or not as tangible in this time of kind of sequestered life.
Yeah.
Like there's something about watching and taking the broken body and blood poured out for Christ with people that I love and know that is eye-opening to me in ways that I'm not experiencing right now.
Well, I mean,
I
think, yeah, I mean, James K. A. Smith's thoughts have been formative for me in the last couple of years, but he talks a lot about these things as, embodied practices, or, and that,
sure,
that our lives, everything in our life is a liturgy, which is essentially saying that it's a way that we enact what we worship.
Yes.
We train ourselves in what we worship. And it feels like in our churches, we built in these mechanisms that train us how and what to worship. And to most of us, we don't even recognize that's what we're doing.
Right.
But when you take that away, it becomes, then you start to see the other things that you do, and you're not being formed in the way that you were and brought back the way that you were. And I think it becomes very easy to slip into worshiping what your heart subtly always desired more than God.
Sure.
Anyway, but I mean, I miss those things too, and I miss being with the people. And I think part of that's because we have built in and trained ourselves for something good, and we can't embody it anymore. Not right now, or it's hard, or it's very, very. I wouldn't say we can't, but
we're doing it in a new way.
Yeah, in an uncomfortable way, and a less connected way to one another. Yeah. It's been a loss, I would say.
It has been.
And I look forward to this being over because of that, which I think that's good. I've heard a lot of people saying they miss being together. And honestly, before the last few weeks, I just wasn't hearing people missing it. Like I felt like, maybe this is just my assumption, but I felt like people were almost like burdened by it every week. And not burdened, not but kind of like, oh, I really should go, kind of more in that mindset. And then in the last few weeks, not having it, I've heard a lot more people say that they miss each other, that they miss the Lord's table, that they miss worshiping and hearing other people's voices. We sang over a Zoom call, and everybody was muted, but you could see a few mouths moving. It's not the same. And I think it's creating a good, in that sense, a healthy desire to have that back that maybe we didn't have.
Right.
But I'm not saying it's just good, because it's always broken when something's missing or taken away, even for a period of time.
Yeah. No, I think, well, one of the things I realize is there are elements of, the way our liturgies work. For instance, you have a particular liturgy that happens on Sunday, but then during the week, I suspect, you have a Bible study or a coffee meeting or an elder meeting, and
which are rhythms or liturgies or stories we tell through our actions. Yeah.
But when you take that Sunday liturgy out, and it hasn't actually infiltrated your weekly life, I think that's the absence I'm feeling. I realize, like, oh, well, I could and should be breaking bread in a similar way with whoever is near me on a regular basis. I should be processing confession together with the people I'm in. Like that structure that's offered to me on Sunday is not just something I do on Sunday. It's actually a rhythm that's offered to me to practice every day. And what does that look like? So that like, as a community, as my people are going, they feel connected to this larger liturgical experience. I don't know. There's things I'm processing through, but might as well talk about it out loud now.
Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that we've been going for a little while here, and unfortunately, I have another Zoom call coming up, and then another one.
Yeah?
Another one.
I tried to limit today to 2. I was like, I just can't do it.
I would like that to be my limit today. Maybe my computer is just going to crash.
No, that'd be good. Just we'll pray for crashing computers. No, you don't want that.
I don't think I quite want that. But anyway, man, it's been good to talk to you, and
yeah.
And so hopefully we put out some interesting ways of thinking about Tiger King and really anything else you do with your time. So thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you all. Sorry for the sound quality that you get over Zoom calls, but not really that sorry, because this is what we got, and that's okay. So anyway, we're going to post these up to YouTube because there's video, and why not? It's always on all of our platforms. We would love for you to email us at faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com, anything that you would like us to discuss on the show. And thanks for tuning in.
All right.
You've been listening to Andy and Eric on Faith Over Breakfast. Like us on Facebook and Instagram, and follow us on Twitter. Send us your questions at faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com.